All right, all right. Excellent, excellent. Should be technically live as Chris gets ready to join in. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This might actually get cut out a little bit from once the video and live is done processing, but we're live here on YouTube as well. So if we're on Twitch, should be fun. And we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy XIV patch 6.2, our thoughts, impressions, review, answering the question, should you return if you've been on a break, as my voice decides to slightly fail. All right, looks like Chris is joining in. Awesome, dude. Hey, 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 what's up?
Deactivate cam.
Deactivate that cam.
Activate cam.
All right.
Hello.
And freaking tastic.
Oh.
What?
I have green screen on, so it pulls all the green out of our faces, so we look like we're zombies.
Oh, I see that now.
Yeah.
That's how we do it now with the new Twitch updates. Is like they're like, yeah, it's a totally different experience on YouTube and on Twitch. Two completely different kind of visual experiences being had.
I'll fix it after this match. Oh,
I don't know, man. It'd be perfect
it's
for October.
Spooky Vision.
Oh man. Good morning, Holloway. How are you doing today? Thanks for being the first person to chat over here on the YouTube side. Thanks for the likes, by the way, guys. Appreciate y'all so much. It's been a busy week. We haven't had a chance to sync up at all, so it's kind of been quiet on the YouTube video posting side of things. So hopefully you guys have been enjoying the patch as much as we have. And also, guys, if you aren't aware, Chris actually did a nighttime stream doing some some of the map Excitotron 6000s last night, and apparently made, how much money did you make? Like 20 billion, Gil?
Last night's probably 17 or 18.
17 or 18 million.
If it all sells.
Yeah. If it all sells. I guess that's the caveat. Like, just it's the value. It's the intrinsic.
Base is up 4. We had somebody get the mount. The mount single-handedly worked 12.
Yeah.
Fido's got to be up a fair bit. Fido's up 15 to 17.
Oh, okay.
I bet we made 60 million as a set, as 8 of us, or more. It's possibly farmed up 100 million Gil in one night. It was wild, the amount of luck. I mean, just back to back, 5th and final chamber. So, guys, first of all, big news. Twitch says that now, while one streamer cannot broadcast to 2 competing platforms at the same time, they are no longer exclusive with their partner agreement.
Yeah.
Which means that if we had, theoretically, 2 people with 2 different stream setups broadcasting from 2 different locations, we could, through the power of being more than one creator, be on both YouTube and Twitch at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we're making that announcement right now.
While live.
We are live on both.
Yeah. And what this also means, for those of you who have been following over on Prime, we were able to kind of get around that with a beautiful legal loophole of being separate legal entities that have agreed. So the live letter coverage that we've had over on Prime, because Prime is me and Work to Game is us, and us is partnered, but me individually is not, and Chris individually is not.
Form for it.
What's up? Yeah, Chris.
I get the tax form for
Chris
it.
Has got the tax form.
If you're wondering how do they assign it to somebody, we picked one.
So that also will mean that we get to bring back live letter coverage right here, which is really where it all started as well. So that's some really exciting stuff. Now, Santigan Live says, any good news about housing for returning players? And that's going to tie into kind of the theme for this video, who knows what we end up cutting it up into and doing what is. But Chris, do you have any good news for about housing and Final Fantasy XIV?
Housing specifically? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No news is good news. So nothing got worse. They added new housing items for people that have access to housing. They added posters if you have a lot of money and you want to spend it. you have an apartment, you can go put a 40 million guild poster up that says "Forgive me" with a dead Namatsu on it.
Yeah.
Or for just 3 million, you can have a sorry Lalafell. And so there's, that's what they're doing for the refund policy. Is anybody who wants those posters can buy them. They're market prohibited, thank goodness. So you're not going to have this weird gilded moment where like people were selling gilded mounts for more than they're worth, which just felt gross. As somebody who yesterday listed 2 of the new Housing Zone Orchestron scrolls, which are purchased at 5,000 gil a piece, and when I bought mine to unlock it, I was like, let me just buy a second one and see if anybody wants to pay me like 10,000 for this, right? Then that'll save them a trip to the housing district. They'll get a scroll. I get my scroll paid for. We'll call it a day.
Yeah.
That sold for 173,000. So I immediately went back to the housing district and purchased another one. Sold it for 172,000. I now have 4 of those listed at 170,000 a piece because that seems great.
Yeah.
It says in the tooltip if something is sold at a shop, if any of you are like, how do I know if I'm being swindled by Chris? It tells you right there in the tooltip, shop selling price. And if it's a shop that's behind like tribal rep, excuse me, it'll say restricted. So
kind of like Chris is going to be the racist grandpa. And this is like back in my day, we called them beast tribes.
I mean, we didn't mind if they shopped at the same grocery store, but the slogan were beast traps.
Yeah, the emphasis on beastly. It was a compliment to her.
I mean, I liked Sylph as much as the next guy.
I dated one. Now, Chris, if you don't mind checking what mic input's coming in, because it sounds like I don't know what.
Awful.
It doesn't sound awful. It just sounds very airy versus where it was coming on the Twitch side. And while you check on that, I'm going to answer this question from chat saying, Sal asks, hey, Brian, how did your stand-up go last night? And I absolutely killed it, dude. It was so much fun. Several people actually did show up in support, which was just wonderful. Got a couple messages. People weren't, hey, I was playing on Cup, can't make it, etc. So it was really exciting to see, hang out with the people and just have a generally fun time. My comedy does go into kind of some dark places, so I always kind of like want to let people know, like, if you come to the show, like, just be ready to go on a journey with me in that regard. So it's been it was a great time. One thing I did learn is that there is one moment and one joke that I have to literally pause because it is this wave over the audience that ends up like like it's like, and if I go into the next thing too soon, like I end up cutting that off, and then the next thing doesn't pay off as well. But I was like, okay, yeah, I gotta let that one sit. So there's a couple of jokes that are like this wave where it's like everybody's like, all right, wait a minute, and then all of a sudden it gets processed. So I gotta have I'm still working on obviously becoming a better presider of my own stand-up.
So,
yes.
Other news. Speaking of the fact that we're dual streaming, we're going to be actually increasing the number of stream hours on Twitch in the month of September, and I'm taking the last week off, and we're going to do that through like just being live like all the time,
brute force,
just all the time.
Yeah.
So do want to announce that if any of you are wanting to hang out with us, that's where we'll be on Twitch all the time.
So for Monday, in order to help kind of like make sure that we hit our hours that we're shooting for, like I will actually not be doing open mics on Monday, so that way I'll actually bring some Monday night streams. So if you guys want to join me in Final Fantasy 14, doing maybe some Excitotron stuff, maybe we'll do the raids or the extremes or what have you. So Monday nights I'll be live over on Twitch, and I'll see if I can also get another evening in, but then Fridays as well. So if you guys are watching this live with us or you're watching this as a VOD, here in a little bit, note that Friday nights I've been streaming New World, and that's going to continue on, for the near future for sure, because we've been having an absolute blast with that.
And then I'll have some giveaways and things like that we'll announce as that gets closer. One of those is actually we've been doing nighttime streams with sponsors lately. So I've been doing bonus streams, and bonus streams are brought to you by somebody. And one of our sponsors reached out and said that they were really thrilled, and they just wanted to they wanted to do a giveaway. So we're gonna be doing a Huel giveaway on one of our Huel streams. So they're gonna be giving you guys, they're actually giving you guys the same box they sent me, which is like a ridiculous amount of stuff. So pretty cool.
Yeah. And how we manage, but like as just a heads up for sponsors, like that's how you can support Chris. Like, Chris is handling that in that regard. So it's a really great way. If you guys at least if click the links, that's one way that we also get more sponsors. But right now it's like, yeah, like that's awesome. I did sign up for Chris's HelloFresh sponsorship because that was
Your wife texted me and said that she was really excited about it.
Yeah, we've been oh dude, we just got the and like again, I get no money from them at all.
When you guys subscribe, I say over on Twitch, I say thank you for Brian and I. It makes a huge difference. But the sponsorships I just run.
Yeah. And but no, we had the like the shrimp and sausage with like the rice, and like it was kind of it was just incredible, dude. We had that last Wednesday for our little date night, and it was so good. I was like, and Julie and I looked at each other, this little bit some left over. And I was like, you can have it. She's like, thanks. I was like, yeah, you can. I was like, if you don't want it, like I'll absolutely eat it. I got no problem with that. But it was great. All right, Mr. R Tubi, Michael, what's up, dude? Says it's a terrible patch. You can't even get your own island unless you've cleared Endwalker, and I don't even have the Shadowbringers expansion installed.
Brian already had this conversation this morning.
Yeah, should we go ahead and start the show in the video?
Let's start.
Yeah.
Because Brian had that exact same question because he hasn't done it yet. And without ruining too much, I was kind of able to give, because he asked, like, will we be able to ever get access to this without Endwalker?
Mm-hmm. Hey, can before we actually start that, Phil's asking, can you post the link for the Huel thing in YouTube chat so that way he can see it? Because that's one of the things. Chat. Yeah, because on YouTube chat I can actually highlight various things, but obviously something. Do we have the bot working on YouTube? We haven't been streaming on YouTube. I haven't been.
Can you do exclamation point Huel and see if it works?
I can try. HUEL.
Stream Elements and Nightbot work over there. It should just work. HUEL, like human fuel. I think that's how they came up with the name. It always kind of takes something away. I like Huel as a name, and then you always explain the name, and you're like when somebody says like, "Hey, I named my kid Frank," and you're like, "Oh, that's cool," and you're like, "Yeah, it was like my best friend's dog growing up," and you're like, "Well, I like it less now." Like just leave it as a name.
It did not work, but I'm gonna paste it in. Let me. Oh yeah, and they're gonna restrict me to 200 things. Okay, and bop. There we go. All right, yeah, he did. He command nothing. It did nothing.
All right, we'll work on that.
All right, cool. We'll go and run this. We'll go and run this like a podcast. I'll record it and we can toss it up on the Crystal Core if it ends up being a long form video, etc. Who knows? All right, you ready?
Yep.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Work the Game back over here on YouTube for the live stream itself. So if you're joining in live, thank you so much for being here. Be sure to sound off in the comments, and we're going to have a great discussion talking about patch 6.2 and asking and answering the question, is it time for you to return? Should you return with Final Fantasy XIV's latest update? This is kind of the mid-tier. This is that you kind of think of the end game of Final Fantasy XIV broken up into three categories. The first end game, which just concluded with 6.1, the mid game, the mid end game with 6.2 to 6.3, and then the final, end game before we get ready to go into 7.0 with 6.4, 6.5. So we're right in the meat of the expansion cycle. And if you guys are also curious, you can also listen to these podcasts on iTunes, Spotify. All the links should be in the description. If they're not, let me know in the comments, and I will try not to be lazy and actually get you guys the information that you need. But we're going to be talking about the patch. Now, anybody who's worried about spoilers and things like that, no, that's going to be later on in the episode. We will clearly designate when that is going to start to pop up. But ultimately, we'll be talking about the content that we played, the content we haven't played, and just generally our thoughts as well. So Chris and I both had a very different experience. I want Chris to kind of jump in and give everybody the context of what you've experienced, what you might not have yet experienced. What's your plan to then experience the things you haven't experienced? And then I'll say experience for one more good measure. Sound off in the comments with the word experience if you made it this far. Go ahead, Chris.
So my goal is to be a lot more thorough during Endwalker. My goal during Shadowbringers was to be broader as a player, which is why among many other reasons I gave story a shot. And I've appreciated being broader. And then I really only dove deep on the things I already liked. And so, I took the real big risk of doing more of things I liked. And so now with Endwalker, I'm trying to be like much deeper across the board. I want to experience so many parts of this community that has like just literally changed my life. My wife said the other day, I was like, I think it's changed my life. That might be a little exaggerated. And she goes, no, it's not. Like you do this full time. Like this just literally changed the course of your life. And so I want to give more of it a shot. So I'm trying to do everything in every patch. I haven't done DSU yet because like as a single piece of content, that could be 200 hours of my life or more. So 6.2, I did my MSQ. Enjoyed it. The MSQ has been really meaty this time around. When people ask me kind of what I thought, I think that's like the least spoilery way to kind of talk about it. But just like 6.1, they've got a lot of ground to cover setting up a new saga. So they just feel like they're moving both really fast and kind of through mud. Like they're doing a lot.
It is I feel like it is in an awkward position. I was talking with Benny, the comic historian, about it, in that regards. It's like they're in this position of, we've just completed the saga. How do we invite you into a new saga, right? Like it's like, that was a big one. But yeah, the meaty is a good word. I think that that's kind of right. Like in a way, it's kind of I feel like it's like a tough steak. It's not quite so tender, so you're kind of like, it does taste good, but it I'm kind of like, all right. Anyway, yeah, go ahead with your food analysis.
So Pandemonium. Now I liked Stars Were Lit as a storyline. I liked Binding Coils as a storyline, because those are the only other two raid storylines I've done so far, as I go back and re-clear all the things I've missed over the years for the narrative reasons. Somebody asked if I'd done Void Arc, and I was like as a raid? Yeah, I've done it with Blue Mages. I've done it across the board. As the story? No, I'm not there yet. And so I'm really liking the raid storyline. This feels very similar to some of the previous raid and alliance raid storylines, where like I expected something to pay off over the whole time, and actually like the second chapter did a lot more for me than I thought it would. I kind of expected it to just be the middle step, and it's actually been kind of the middle of the sandwich, where I feel like, wow, there was really some good stuff in here. I'm looking forward to seeing what the final chapter brings us, which is 8 months in the future. They added Tataru's Grand Endeavor. I have not done that. They added a new extreme for the story trial. I have not done that, though I've watched some of it. Unreal moved on to Sephiroth. I've heard that's pretty challenging, so I haven't made time for that yet. But I was going to last night, and I ended up in maps grinding the new ingredients. They've made PvP changes. I have not touched that yet. But Island Sanctuary, I did go ahead and spend a whole day in Island Sanctuary. So I'm at level 4 of 10, and I'm moving through that. And that's kind of where I'm at. So I've actually spent a lot of time with the patch. I did a bunch of crafting and gathering on day 1 to kind of print some of that money. Because I spent a lot of money the week before on Minion Bingo. Mm-hmm. So I've actually recovered and more of the 12 million I spent on Minions. So did you know that you could buy every Minion that is currently not market prohibited in the game on a fully blank account for just 67 million gil?
I did not.
That's a very achievable number. Like, it's a huge number, but like the Golden Beaver's 21 of it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. That's a lot.
So like you could probably increase your number of minions by like 100 today.
Okay. With the 67 million gil that,
depending on how much you have. Like if you have no minions on your account, which I know you don't. Yeah. If you have no minions on your account, you can get like 100 minions for like 100,000 gil.
Maybe I should do that.
I was thinking about making some videos on it because I've been spreadsheeting out on minions.
Oh yeah, more spreadsheet streams and videos coming soon.
Yeah, my wife's friend who works like, that's pretty cool that you're able to do video games now. My job like has gone away from like what I was passionate about, and I spend all day in spreadsheets, and I'm like,
yeah, about those spreadsheets. So for myself, like to kind of jump in on the Island Sanctuary piece of it. So like obviously, like I leaned first into the story, and then I leaned into the raids, and then essentially I have absolutely struggled with the desire to even want to step foot on Island Sanctuary. Like I've literally found myself like, I really should log in and check out what this thing's about. And then it's like, or I could just kind of play some multiverses. Like, it's like every little thing is like, I'm giving myself every reason. So in going into it, like I'm always going to be the guys like, I'm glad if there's content that you enjoy, that it exists, for you. But it's like, in terms of like this, I've really been like, I just don't feel like it's going to be content that I'm going to enjoy based off of everything that they've seen and presented. And then when it's out, like, I'm like, I would rather do any number of things in the game than what this proposes to be itself. And then you were telling me, and I thought this is actually probably a pretty good idea, is that I should actually team up with Maddie. So for those of you who don't know, we haven't been following the channel for a long time, Maddie is my 8-year-old daughter, and you feel like this actually would be a piece of really interesting content for the two of us to do, because you can't die, there's no combat, it's, you know, really kind of cozy content. And that's essentially where the frustration and the weirdness comes into play, is like, why does this start after you finish Endwalker? And there's an answer to it, but I don't think it's an answer that could have or needed to exist. It was designed the way that they designed it, and it could have been, in my mind, something that opens up at level 10. You know, hey, welcome. Now that you've done this, like, everybody gets an island because reasons.
So the reason it can't is, first of all, there are reasons.
Okay.
The islands do exist in the physical world. There's some weird lore ramifications if you think about 25 million warriors of light, but if you just think about it the way they describe it, and you are the only warrior of light, there are multiple islands, and there is a logical position in the world for them to be. I immediately had to pause and go pull up my map and nerd out about where that is. And we go there with somebody. We are introduced to the content with an NPC that we already have a relationship with.
Yeah.
And that relationship couldn't exist for new players. And so, much like other things where, like, some players are like, let me ruin my own story. And I don't disagree with that. But I will tell you, Final Fantasy, as a rule, doesn't really offer that as an option. Yeah. They sell skips, but they don't let you do things out of order, as opposed to something like Guild Wars or World of Warcraft. They're like, well, if you want to ruin your own journey, you do you. And Final Fantasy is like, no, you're going to do this the correct way, or you're not going to do it at all. And like, as somebody that's been a story skipper, that's found plenty of things outside of the story to enjoy in the game, and like, I enjoyed all those years. I have no regrets. I was called a repentant story skipper. I will tell you, I'm not repentant. I'm perfectly happy with how I got here. And I can just tell you that, like, that was a very frustrating barrier to put up, that you're so it's literal gatekeeping. It's literally like, we know the best way. We know best. You think you know better, but you don't. So I can understand the frustration with not getting access to Island Sanctuary, especially for players that, like, want to come back for those 3 weekends and they've got Shadowbringers and they're like, well, let me see if Endwalker's worth the purchase. Let me try this Island Sanctuary thing out. You can't. It's an expansion locked feature, which on its own is a technical hurdle, but it's also, like, narratively actually baked into the world. And I think the reason they did that was that 7.0 is supposed to be moving us into this new saga. And they have to basically build an entire introduction over only patch content. So they've got 5 patches to start an entire 5 to 10 year saga. They're going to need every single page they can put in that book to write on. And so they are shoving, of course, MSQ quests go in that book, but, like, let's tell part of the story with trials. Let's tell part of the story with raids. Let's tell part of the story with, like, anything that can help build out that world. And I think Island Sanctuary, while it is cozy content, was a chance to expand on the narrative that we're moving into post 6.0.
Okay. That's good to know. Cause, like, I will do it. It just, when it comes down to it, you know, I was actually talking with Chili a little bit about this, and he feels that he started to relate how it plays, and this is actually what got me to be like, okay, maybe I will try to make this a priority, that it actually kind of feels like what New World does, like, in terms of, like, how the world is, like, really kind of like crafting and gathering and more interactive, and that ultimately, like, when it comes down to, when I see that kind of content, when I see Eureka and Bosja, like, it makes me look at those systems and say, I want that in the whole game. You know, like, I want more of what this is everywhere, and not on its own Island Sanctuary, not within its own, you know, kind of piece of the world that doesn't then translate into the general open worldness of it all. And so I'm wondering, though, like, as we start to barrel towards 7.0, as we were like you're saying with 6.1, 6.2, world building to get to wherever the heck we're supposed to go in 7.0, and Yoshi P even commented on that, like, apparently in 6.5, there's going to be kind of a big story moment that really sets up the expansion, which, that comment alone makes me go, like, yeah, that isn't that what every 0.5 patch does? You know, it's like
big bold prediction.
Well, yeah, like, okay, okay, Cotton, let's see what do they do with this one. And so when it comes down to it, it's like, I do wonder, you know, like, will we see bigger overhauls, because they're talking about the graphics overhaul,
sure,
etc. But from what I've experienced within this patch is, like, you know, yeah, there's things I haven't gotten to yet. Next week, the Savage drops. I feel like that's actually already been healthy. I don't know how you feel about that. You're thinking about actually jumping into Savage. like kind of for like as a progression thing for the first time. But how do you feel about that as,
So
as
the
somebody
rumors have it that WoW's going the other way. They're going to move Mythic to be in day and date. So they're doing the opposite direction. I think it's been really healthy across the board to stall it out. I have seen a ton of interest in extremes. I've already seen Lama Todd helping with extremes. So I think it's taught a lot. Maybe I'm just biased because I'm actually I capped on tomes for my first time since Heavensward this week. I did it by accident in maps, but I was actually intending to run the experts necessary to cap it. I just now saved myself the trip. And like, I think that the delay has been really healthy to see people take an interest in extreme, to see people taking an interest in Unreal has been a growing trend, but also to see people taking an interest in pentamelding and to see people take an interest in like chasing that early gear as opposed to just kind of waiting for the game to naturally give it to us. Cause it is a bit of a hamster wheel, and like sprinting on it doesn't get you any further. You just run faster. But I think it's been fun to kind of offer that as an option. And the trade-off is like, okay, so we gained a little something, and maybe some people didn't gain something, but what did it cost us? It doesn't seem to have cost us anything. Sphia, one of the world first raiders, did Island Sanctuary, has already finished Island Sanctuary this week. That wouldn't have happened otherwise. So like the people who you think would be most affected, these kind of world first raiders, I think of the public personalities because those are names that are public, obviously, but there's many people that kind of love that week one Savage experience. I haven't seen any of them not having fun with the game. I haven't seen any of them going, ugh, now I can't even play 6.2 until a week after it launches. They've all been having an absolute blast. And I think because Savage prep is not, it's not a bunch of work. It just says, hey, take this week casual. It would have been different if they're like, hey, we're stalling it. And to get your gear, you have to put 100 hours in.
Right. Yeah.
So I really like that there's really no requirement to get into Savage beyond getting your crafted Pentameld set. And many of you out there already have the money for that, or have already had the materia, or have learned, okay, how do I make money? And how do I start having all this materia in the future? So I think it's a good thing all the way around. I have yet to see anybody come up with a valid complaint that should affect the entire community and not just that person, right? Like something that's like, if you think of it just from your viewpoint, I can understand maybe why you feel different. But when you try to think of all the different varieties of players, I think it's just a good change.
So when it comes down to just my overall like feeling with the with this patch, and basically trying to answer the question, should you return to Final Fantasy XIV for this patch? That's like, I think that answer for me, and I'm going to be curious as to kind of how you take this, but my answer ends up being kind of, how long have you been away from the game itself? Like if you were like, hey man, like, I was talking with Benny, but I was like, also I've heard from others that have the same kind of sentiment, like, hey, I finished Endwalker. Woo, like this big, like, like, all right, that was something else. I can't believe that we've been on this over like almost like ARR celebrates 9 years like tomorrow or something like that. But like still, like even 1.0, like you're talking about 13 years with this game. And it's like, wow, that was a journey. Like that was something else, right? But yeah, I would probably say you probably would enjoy staying away, because like one of the things I'm struggling with is like I don't feel hooked on this new story. I'm curious from a world and lore perspective, right? When we talk about World of Darkness, the Void Sent, what are we going, and then obviously the tie-ins to Final Fantasy IV are interesting and exciting to see personally. So I'm like, yeah, let's see where this goes. I'm actually very interested as a Final Fantasy fan, but as a longtime player of this game, I'm just like, that was something else. Like what are we just going to do small stories from here on out? Are we going to be changing the world in any big way? And so if you're kind of like that, I would probably say, yeah, probably not the time to return for 6.2, because it's only going to get easier in terms of the gear grind come 6.4. The 0.4 patch always is kind of that, like, hey, you have the final tombstone, you have the gear that's, the max gear for that expansion, is there. It gets a little bit easier in 6.5 as well, but 6.4 is, if you're going to put it in the grind, you're going to end up having more of these story chapters together. Because obviously, like now we're sitting here and, well, we're going to wait probably most likely until January. It could be end of December for 6.3, but most likely I would bet, if we were going to put a date on it, it'd be in the first week of January. And I know you have a spreadsheet with calculations.
I
do. We can get scientific with this bad boy.
I actually got the new rumored WoW date. I'm dead on, which makes me feel good because I was off on 14.6.2. Mm-hmm. I'm guessing the 10th of January. I could be late, but that's my guess.
Yeah, that starts to sound right. So that's saying he has a crackpot theory that the Alliance raid MSQ storylines are going to converge before 6.5. And that's something I would really appreciate, because that would actually tie in exactly with what Chris was saying, where it's like they're trying to feed in any amount of story and world into any part that they can, because to set up another epic, right, if that's the direction they go, like that's going to be that's a lot of work. That's like, how do you build in these villains? How do you build in these things? Like, where are we going to go? But also it helps to have an understanding of, like, if there is another big bad looming out there, off in the distance, like, how do you also make things that make sense now, pay off in, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, especially as we barrel towards another 10 years. So I personally am struggling, like, with the, like, being excited about, like, the investment, that it's like, okay, are we gonna, like, what is going to keep me beyond a story, like what, like, because that was what was keeping me, like, going, and as it built up, and now I'm like, all right, and like the content, I played the raid, I thought that was fun, but like, it's not like I'm gonna sit here and play. I know the way I play, I'm not gonna play that raid every week. I'm not gonna go jump into Savage because I don't have more than, it's not fair for me to try and have a static. So if I do anything, it's going to have to be a pug group, in that regard. So it's like, when it comes down to it, if you've only recently been away, like, should you return with 6.2? Probably not. I think continue to take a break and feel that out. But if you have, like, people who have been like, I've been on a break since Heaven's Word or Stormblood. Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, I would say that's the time to return. But that's just obviously my opinion. What do you think, Chris?
I think 6.25 is the time to return for people that pieced out after MSQ, after 6.0.
Yeah.
That gives us 2 complete patch cycles worth of content. So that gives you the 0.5 stuff, which was just rounding out the expansion. That also gives you 0.1 and its half patch, 0.2 and its half patch, which means at that point you've gotten the odd numbered patches, give us like casual raid content. We get our Alliance raid. And then we got the ultimate, and we move into tribal quests and things like that. So it just kind of rounds out the world to complement the Savage and stuff that launched, and all the extremes that launched with because of Endwalker. Then the 0.2, we get a second tier of Savage. We start the relic grind in 0.25. We're adding the new hard mode dungeons, the story mode dungeons. And so, like, I think at that point you've created a little bit of something for everybody.
Yeah.
So I think 0.25 is the logical time to come back. And that means, like, if some of the things that are already in the game are here, you could technically come 2 weeks, 4 weeks before 0.25. But I think 0.25 is the kind of, that's your hard open date. If you need to soft open a couple weeks to kind of get prepped for 0.25, totally valid, so that you can be in 0.25 content on day and date. As of right now, I'm guessing that's the 18th of October. I could be early on that one. But that's my guess. And so, like, I would say, if you're going to come back, start finishing up whatever game you're on right now. If you're in a single player game, take your time, finish it up. And then sometime in the next month or two would be kind of that ideal time post 6.0 to return, in my opinion. So I think the 6.2 cycle is the ideal time. I just don't think it's today.
Yeah, the half patch stuff, because it's typical, as we see, in comments and, in live streams, like, hey, where's the Hildy stuff? And hey, where's the Criterion? Sure. And it's like, that's coming, like, half patch. I'm really thrilled to kind of go hands on with that. I think whether it was a translation error or they ended up switching things around, I think originally Island Sanctuary was looking at 6.25 and the variant was going to be in 6.2. But now Variant and Criterion and Savage Criterion are all in 6.25, which when it comes down to content for everybody, content for every play style, like, I look at 6.2 as just, I think you described it perfectly well, meaty, right? Like, oh, do you like Savage raids? Great. Oh, do you want more? Well, Savage dungeons, like, it's like bada bing, bada boom. Like, we haven't had this before. That's what I think is personally the most thrilling about it, is we haven't seen content like this ever in Final Fantasy 14. So it's going to be curious to see, like, what kind of feedback does the community have with it? We don't know. We can only still speculate up to the point that it's released. But then also it's like, oh man, like I don't have the ability to get into Savage, or like maybe I don't, I wish there was something for me that was, dungeon related. Oh, guess what? Variant and normal criterion. Like it just feels like, okay. And on variant, like you just want to go and try to solo it. You want to try and do duo. Yeah. Like go nuts and see where you can go with it. I think that's going to be something personally very thrilling to see. And then the next curiosity that I really have with the game outside of its story is, what does the next deep dungeon look like? Because they said that we were assuming that that's the 6.3 update. Yoshi was talking about another deep dungeon on its way, and
should be 6.3.
Yeah, and so like if patterns hold, which in 14's world, that's one of the it's its strength and its weakness is that people who are new are like, this is great. Oh my gosh, more content. And everybody else who's been here a while, they're like, yeah, this is how it is.
I mean,
you can make a spreadsheet and predict literally everything.
The combat system also favors content lasting a long time. And so by not adding a deep dungeon last expansion, it's not one of those games where that means there's no deep dungeon in game. The previous deep dungeons are still deep dungeons. There were people still clearing deep dungeons last expansion. There was a huge push to get that Necromancer title once we found out that Reaper was being added to the game. So, I mean, you look back at like, okay, when was 5.3 or whenever that, or 4.3, whenever the last deep dungeon was added, Heaven on High, was that 4.3? That would have been a long time ago, but like you can still run Heaven on High for the first time today, and that's still very much worth doing. So I think it's good that they're bringing it back. It doesn't bother me that they took a break. They took a break and said, okay, let's get some feedback. Let's see if nobody misses it, then we made a good call. People did miss it, so they brought it back.
Yeah.
So it just tells me like they are listening, and it looks like we're in for a really great 6.2. We're in for a really great 0.3. I think it's great. So what is your plan with the remaining content? Are you going to get through Island Sanctuary? Are you tackling any of the Unreal, Extreme, or Savage from this tier? And will you be doing any of the new PvP? Because it offers a mount.
Yeah, the PvP looks really great. Because especially in terms of numbers, I think I'd love to see the dev team, embrace more about PvP. I think they've definitely made some positive steps in that direction, which is exciting to see. So yeah, the PvP plan is definitely on there. Island Sanctuary, I'm going to try to carve out time with Maddie and do that. I think that's going to be where I probably find fun in it, as opposed to like generally being like, oh great, like I'm playing an MMO solo. It's like that doesn't resonate with me, like in terms of it. Like every time we lean in, I'm like the developer minded to me, and the business, like when you look at the industry, it's like, well, clearly like making things accessible is a good business move. Like being able to have people come in and play 14 and not have anxiety when teaming up with others is a good business move. But I'm not playing this game for that experience. Like this is my social time, like in that regard. So so I get it, but it's in contrast to like what I look for in it. So if I team up with Maddie, I think that actually kind of solves that problem from my perspective. And so I like that feedback that you had given me in that regards. When it comes down to it, I would like to jump into the Extreme trial. I'd like to see if I can't start finding time to carve that out. And so I think with doing a little bit more streams over on Twitch, in the evenings, that should help jump into like finding time to actually do it, because that's one of the things that I run up against. It's like, well, it is this weird contrast of like, okay, I can do this kind of content because I have limited time, versus like, oh yeah, do I actually have the ability to set time aside and actually dedicate myself to it? And I'd like to do some of this Excitedtron stuff, at its core, because like that's like before variant dungeons, like when we look at maps and the just the RNG, the variation that content it is some of the most repeatable and enjoyable content, because it is so different. It isn't, you're never going to have the exact same experience when you go in each time you go in, and it just kind of feels fun and exhilarating. And then if you get kicked out, you get kicked out. So it's not like nobody feels like they failed because it's somebody didn't do their job, right? It's just like, that's just the way, you know, you picked left or you picked right, or you know, like, it is what it is, right? So that's going to be my plan. Essentially, though, kind of trying to set myself up to jump into the variant Criterion and even Criterion Savage. So there might be some goals of actually getting into current Savage for any kind of pug group, just so that I can then try and jump into and be ready to experience whatever Criterion is, because that's actually what is the most interesting, you know, proposal that 14 has had in a while.
Fight 1 and 2 of Pandemonium felt the same way that like previous 1s and 2s out of a raid tier have felt, where like it's going to go into Savage, but you're just do the thing, and with gear it's probably going to start to fall over after a couple weeks. Fight 3 in normal already felt like a wall.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in Savage, like, it just, you could already feel that big step that part 3s can have. So if you're looking for gear for Savage dungeons, you could just run your 1 and 2 every week. Crafted gear's incredible. You know, I think you're already in 610. So
yeah, I'm in 610 for my tank, and then my healer is almost, I think I'm at 605 or something like that. So making progress there. But like, yeah, I think I only have 1 or 2 pieces of crafted healer gear. Most of it has just been picking up, you know, drops and things like that. So
cool. Well, hopefully I'll get to play some Extreme with you.
Yeah,
that's, you and I very rarely get to play 14 together.
It's been like the last
been hard
time,
this year.
The last time that we were, it was all like prior to the expansion itself. So we were able to kind of carve out like the streams, and we were doing like our deep dungeon duo challenges and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. So there's definitely fun to be had, and kind of unique ways that you can we can approach the content.
Watched you play this expansion a ton.
Yeah, you have. It's like more of it. The also though, it would be interesting because like now that I can stream here on the YouTube work to game side of things, like be able to kind of like do more of that, you know, what we originally, you know, were able to do, and being able to bring that back as kind of our plan is going to be great. By the way, thanks guys for the 18 likes here on the YouTube side of things. That's a great way of helping share out these videos and the content we make here. So appreciate each and every one of y'all. So hopefully y'all have been enjoying this discussion. Now, do we want to talk with the remaining time about kind of our thoughts about the story or questions we have with the World of Darkness and with,
Sure.
you know, into the like actual names and themes,
Sure.
as he waves his hands to
Have you done Pandemonium?
Yeah, I've done Pandemonium.
Okay. So yes, I was like, I don't want to talk about MSQ if we can't talk about Pandemonium.
Yeah. I think because like
yes,
the buried memory, like it was absolutely in both, you know.
Let me change stream title.
Yeah.
Talking spoiler. Done. All right. We'll do that. And then after this, I'm going to be playing some Guild Wars on stream, and we'll go back to non-spoiler if anybody wants coming out.
There you
go.
go.
A bunch of updates this week.
Yeah, and Twitch drops for Guild Wars 2, which is I think that's just going to be really great to see. I wonder if we'll start to see stuff like that with 14. It just seems like a system that, I mean, when you look at the numbers, it really does help on the streaming side of things. It really drives a lot of people to lurk on the stream itself, and it gives Twitch a competitive advantage. Like like we haven't really talked about it, but like just as a note, like you can multicast to TikTok and Instagram, and I think that actually they're really just not like that's weird because
there were some alleged people that were already doing it that were large partnered people. And I have to wonder if with this announcement, if that was like they were receiving reports about those people. Hey, this person's breaking the rules. They're breaking the rules. And internally, they're like, no, they're not. Like internally, they're like, no, we were trying this out. We tried it with this person for a brief amount of time. And then that person, you know, so because like if you come out and say, hey, we're giving these people permission, that would have led to frustration. So you have to wonder, because of the timing, you have to wonder if some of these large creators that were doing the TikTok dual broadcasting, if that was sanctioned, and if it wasn't sanctioned,
as like a test. Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we were going to ban it, but it seems really great.
Yeah, it actually is like,
in which case, good on Twitch all the data analytics before making a decision.
All the data was showing like this is driving people to Twitch. Like who would have thought?
Massive success.
That's exactly what the YouTube stuff does as well. Some people are like, oh, cool, yeah, like you know, I'll hop over on the Twitch because Twitch has a I believe
it, for it, right?
Better
the short
interface
form things. Yeah, I found them on the short form. I really prefer the better experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's why they're saying, hey, that's okay with the ones that we know we're better than. No to the ones that are also trying to do all the things we're doing. Like, I totally understand that. And I also think, like, we're doing our first one here and we're doing it as a collab, right? You're representing Work Team YouTube. I'm representing Work Team Twitch. There's different music in our backgrounds. I'm in Bosnia right now, so that's what's playing in the background. People see my settings. So, like, it's two different broadcasts, but we're doing it together. And, like, I can already tell you, I have the YouTube chat up, I have the Twitch chat up, and, like, it's already it's a different skill set. Like, I can feel it as I try to, like, look at it because I've got two chats up. Mm-hmm. And that's just something you get to used to with, like, collabs and podcasts and stuff. But, like, to just offer that broad scale, like, I understand the business side of it. From the streamer perspective, let me do whatever I want, whenever I want. That's great. But, like, I understand that they have a side to represent as well.
I think that should hopefully been plenty enough time to get people to jump out if they needed to jump out for any kind of spoilers themselves. So, all right, this patch, and as well as kind of the build up to to 6.2, has us going into the World of Darkness, stepping first into the dungeon itself, the castle or the fell court of Troya. What did you think about that experience and the boss of that dungeon?
The boss of Troya, Simul large hairy demon person. I think going into the void just in general has a lot of huge ramifications. And I immediately started, like, timelines started getting mixed up in my head. As somebody who's only made it through Heavensward, I was, like, trying to understand when the person that we were, like, doing the dungeon with or whatever, I was trying to understand, like, when and where that person was born and, like, who their parents would be. Because it seems like, I guess they were in the womb at the fall of the 13th. But, like, that doesn't mean they couldn't have an ancient for a parent, an Ascian for a parent. Now, we've only seen Unsundered be men, but her mother didn't have to be. Like, we know, like, Emmett talked about these different experiences. We've seen Ascians be females, but aren't all of the Unsundered male?
Wouldn't Heidelin classify?
Well, Heidelin and Zodiac I just keep separate. But yeah, I guess Vana would have been Unsundered.
So if we're gonna take,
but I don't think Vana's your mother.
Right, yeah. Okay, so far,
could she be half Ascian?
Well, the Ascian would just be somebody who was unsundered, right? Like, that's essentially kind of that classification, correct? Yeah, as opposed to, like, and then on, and you bring in the memories, because I guess you could technically have two Ascians where it's like, oh, this was your previous soul, and let's restore your memories, et cetera, et cetera. But the I guess so that is possible, right? Like, you could almost make the argument that we are, as the warrior light as well, right? With a Zem. So, like, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the direction that they go. They did show, it looked like an execution or whatever with that of an ancient, of an Ascian, which is interesting because in terms of how they've reflected themselves visually to us, like here on the moon and within, like, their display with the masks, but then you actually go back to the world Unsundered and then just really, really tall people. It's like, just really tall. But no, I mean, the three Unsundered that we have known and have since, like, defeated were all males. I don't know if there's any significance in that, but I didn't actually, I guess as a guy, I never really kind of put any kind of, like, oh, there, why aren't there any women here? But maybe somebody's asking that question.
We started spending more time with female ancients. That's what really makes it stand out, is that you immediately realize something's different. They seem almost not human. So at first they all just get presented and they all have masks on. So I didn't really think about it. But then as they've started to present gender more readily, that's when it's become, now I go back, and I'm going back through content. So as you go back through content, you feel very different when you go through, like, Heavensward for your first time. Okay, Orson Archive says Vothri makes it interesting since he is effectively what a Sin Eater situation is. And so he was made by Emmett.
Yeah.
Not
he was in the womb.
Let's say,
right.
He was made through conventional means, right?
Yeah, and then essentially within the womb, much like with Zero, there's the opposite, where lightness and darkness, where Vothri was part Sin Eater, in that regards, and then with Zero, she's obviously part Void Sen, because of that and that nature. But she also was one of the Memoriat, one of the people who were able to then crystallize darkness, which just talking about that, because like one of the cool things
crystal's the same size.
Why not?
Because we put
programming
because in the void, the way you get bigger is you eat other souls.
Yeah.
And when you eat other souls, you actually kind of keep them in there. So you can kind of feel them. Like if you've eaten something that's not good and it's like rumbling around in your tummy, like they're still in there yelling and screaming. You just ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
So when you break them down and they go into that single crystal, are they all trapped in there together densely? It also seems like maybe some get out and like that's their release, like their parent kind of gets captured and so they get to run free. Like I just had a lot of questions about how that Memoria technology works. Plus, it seems to be a blessing of light of sorts. Like it seems to be a gift that they were given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because only a handful of people used it, and she's the last one.
So we call ourselves the source, right?
Yeah.
But the more I learn about this, the more I wonder if Vana was quietly just telling everybody they were the source. And so like everybody's been operating on their own numbering because it seems like, I don't know, let's give these people this Memoria power. See if that works out. If it does, we'll call this the source. Oh, it didn't work out. 13th for sure. 13th. Yeah. Not even close.
How do we number this?
Like, how did we number this? And so it just seems like she would have been kind of going around going, you're the warrior of light. Okay. You're the warrior of light. Like, just, like to each person, because that seems like a really big power to not have shared with us, which makes it seem like she was guessing on what would work. But it's a binding technology, not dissimilar to what we see in Pandemonium, just at a smaller scale. But I just wonder how everything goes in it.
Yeah. I was actually
the trial to be a bigger crystal, and I expected the last boss of the dungeon to be a bigger crystal.
I didn't really care. I was like, all right. It was like honestly, my answer usually is like, why create multiple assets when I guess you could do a scale kind of mindset, but then like you just have to make sure the textures were
drop the business mind. Assume all things are canon. This is a real world. Through your video screen, you're looking into a real world. Any choices they made that were mistakes, those were mistakes canonically, which means that a person in the game, an NPC, made a choice that caused that mistake.
Okay.
That's how I've been treating it.
Okay, cool. I didn't really like, I just like, oh yeah, this is a crystal. That's what they look like. And it's like, I thought they were interesting because they're very long, right? I was like, oh, that like it's an interesting shape for crystals because typically we see them a little bit more condensed. And when you see like the Heidelin, the crystal that we were given to be able to track down Meteoron, like it's a fat crystal, very thick. Disease. And I very like this is gonna get real dirty real quick. And then you have the long ones, all right, MC17 here. But no, I was like, all right, that's an interesting kind of design. I was like, I think it's kind of interesting. I actually really appreciated it after the fact. At first, I was disappointed that the end boss of Felcourt was Sasor, I can't pronounce his name.
Just like
Aglthan.
Amos. Where I was like, what are you doing? And Babel, where you're like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We could be done with the 4 Archfiends and Unai, bro. We could be done with them in 6-3. Like at the rate that they shoot bosses down, they're like, whatever. He's the trial, they're the dungeon. Get it done.
Yeah. And the fact that like in one patch, technically 2 of the 4, and then setting up that it seems like the fire and the ice Archfiends are teaming up. So maybe we'll get a trial with 2 of them, like in one, and and whatever their plan ends up being, like that's.
And they seem to be buddies. Cool. Hey, I'm gonna need his help on this one.
All right.
Fire's like, hey, I'm gonna need Water's help on this one. That seems like a dual fight's being set up.
Exactly. Fire and Water. It's they're it's kind of like makes me you kind of laugh where it's like they end up tripping over each other and solving our problem for them. Like, oh, hey, I'm here. And then Water shows up a little bit late, douses Fire. And then it's like, oh, no, sorry about that. Well, I guess we're going to have to figure this one out, guys. I'm interested to see kind of how that goes. Because then all of a sudden, right, like if we had Wind as a part of the trial. And so we start to say like trial, trial and trial, like as we like look at that, like if Fire and Ice are the next trial,
sure,
then essentially we're looking at 2 additional trials. And is that then Golbaz? And then is that, something else? And if so, then, are we going to go and actually play around with like the driving force behind Golbaz, in that as a trial itself? I think that could actually play out really, really well. If you haven't played Final Fantasy IV, guys, like then you can go and, get a good idea of what that means.
So I think that Pandemonium had me more excited than the main story. The main story felt like, here's your 4 fiends, kill the 4 fiends. There's gonna be a big bad, and you're done.
Yeah.
And the fact that one can be a dungeon boss, you're like, oh, so they're not even all a big deal. That's fine. The triple triad card you just buy with MGP. Like there was nothing hard to acquire about Scarmaleone or whatever.
Thank you for the name pronunciation. I was like, oh man, so
and the hair fight's super cool as an extreme. I would say that Pandemonium is a much bigger thing wreaking havoc on like storylines and stuff. Learning about La Brea and Elidibus and their relationship.
Yeah.
And, I honestly thought that like fight 7 was going to end up being the sun. And then when it wasn't, I was like, well, fight 8 will be the sun for sure. Like for sure. And like, it just kept twisting. Like it just kept twisting and twisting and twisting. And like, at one point I was doing voiceover on stream. I was like, I don't even know what voice to give this guy. Cause he had a voice, but now it's not his voice, but it's definitely still his voice. So like, I guess thank God for the voice direction team that they don't have to voice raid series.
It's a bummer that they don't, because then obviously in turn 8, like he does have a voice, and it's like, all right. And I'm like, gosh, I would love to see this entire thing voiced. That's actually one of the things, like when we start to talk about like what could ARR do to, I think, help out new players as they come into it. It's like, I think, man, if they went and either revoice that or add in way more voice, I think that just would end up helping out a lot of people really kind of get sunk into it a little bit faster. But that really falls and tests the idea of spare no expense. So we'll have to see what Yoshi P wants to do there. But like when it comes to that, like it makes me wish for more voicing of the story itself. Now, obviously, like with the Elidibus reveal, I thought that was really exciting to see. So we have both La Brea, Elidibus, and then like I'm wondering if we'll see Emmett make an appearance at all, and maybe that leads into why these 3 were unsundered, right? Because we never have figured out why these 3 remained untouched by those events.
So Pandemonium is located underneath Elvis, like literally right underneath. Which is intriguing. And with Pandemonium's proximity there, and all the protections that Pandemonium and Elvis would have had to have to protect the star just in case anything went wrong, all the safeguards necessary. I do start to wonder if Elvis or Pandemonium had that ability. And so the unsundered were people who met in one of these like protected locations, like a safe room. So like Katisis kind of showed us that they can set aside safe rooms if there's going to be something dangerous. They used it as a containment to contain the Katisis stuff, but like it could just as easily be used to protect you from outside. My aunt had triplets, and she talks about how when they got old enough that they didn't need to be in the playpen anymore and she needed to get work done, she would go in the playpen to keep them. They can have the rest of the house, and like you can just invert that technology. And so as you with like 5 kids, I assume you're like, yeah, of course, obviously you have safe space. So with that, like I wonder if they were just somewhere that just happened to have protected them, and if they were they there by design? Did Vana say, hey, I got to meet you guys all in conference room B, and they all get to conference room B and they're like, there's nobody in here. And then the world explodes. And like she by design said, hey, I should probably not sunder everybody. So like Pandemonium is big, and Pandemonium teaching us a little more about how the Ethereal Sea works in the context of we're in an MSQ patch where we're learning that like when a world falls, the 13th falls, that bridge with the Ethereal Sea breaks. Like there just isn't death anymore in a standard format. It's bizarre. Like, so that like death in this game is something that's just, it confuses me more and more the more they show. It's one of the few things that really doesn't parallel with Earth. Everything else feels really inspired by like Greek or Roman or something like that. But death in this game feels like they're branching into their own sci-fi.
Yeah. Do you feel, because I see Chad talking about how like Galvez might be planning to invade like the ethereal sea, like that tends to be kind of his thing, and actually then impacting like a little bit. Like imagine like when we start to talk about earlier, like do these stories converge? I would love that. Like I like one of the things that like I liked how eventually Crystal Tower became, part of the MSQ for ARR. The fact that I was like, it was for me like awesome that it was there, and then for players who are like now going through it, it's like, yeah, it makes sense to have that as real required context as opposed to like, oh yeah, you can go learn more about this over here. I mean, if they converge these stories together, like in some way, shape, or form, that would be insane. Like I would love to see what that would look like and how that would then play out.
Pandemonium's on the source now, so like we're one step closer. I think that Golbez having a plan to come consume soul direct from the source would make him immensely powerful, and there would be an immediate concern of like what happens when a void sent of that power is able to cross the bridge.
Yeah.
In which case, you'd kind of be idiots if you were the kind of person that theoretically made the opening bigger. Just saying. But like then we brought a void sent across, and everybody's like, we're worried about her consent. You're bringing somebody across that naturally consumes ether with every breath.
Yeah.
And you're worried about her consent. And like, my question is like, well, what about the source's consent? Like we just had, maybe they don't remember, but like in December, the world was literally raining fire. Yeah. So like maybe don't bring a void sent into the source to consume ether with every breath. Maybe don't. Like the way she ate that apple, she could eat people like that. So like, they're like, yeah, but we met her like 5 minutes ago and I really like her. Maybe don't. Like it felt really reckless to just we got to bring her back. Like it felt unbelievably reckless. But the fact that it worked out okay, I guess makes me think that like maybe the rest thinks I'll just go consume direct from the sea. And it may be more complicated than that. Maybe you don't just walk into a Tioscope and just consume.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because like on ethereal understanding and ethereal lore, and in a way like ethereal theology of how like all of this works within the person, it's like how they have to consume, but how with the fact that it's dark aspected, that there is no like death, as opposed to like where light aspected is that calm, that peace, and you need that balance between both. Like, will we be able to restore the world of darkness? Or will we start going on a journey of our own, kind of pick up where the Ascians left off and be like, oh no, turns out they were right. The source is dying. We have to rejoin now that Hydaelyn and Zodiark are no more. I generally am like, that's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many interesting aspects, and that's what's appealing to me. But there is the sense of like, I would like to see, having these long gaps. It's like, I'm kind of jealous of somebody who would be like, oh yeah, I finished Endwalker and now 6.5's out. Oh my gosh. Like you get to experience it without these like 4-month delays. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
they said she's going to have to rest. And I literally said out loud for 4 months.
For 4 months.
And then she woke up. And so I was like I honestly thought they were like, and we'll see you later.
Right. Like I literally thought they were going to do that too. Where it's like, oh, she's resting. And then it's like, hey, we got a message that she's finally woken up. But so then also that kind of says
like, that was short.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see that, how that plays out. Obviously, she's the only, at least from the technology, the skill, the blessing, or whatever she's been given, like is the only way for us to actually be successful in the world of darkness.
Why we wanted to bring her back. I just didn't know why nobody brought up the caveat. Everybody's like, this is all pros. Like, she can kill Void Sin. She's part Void. Bring her back.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we don't do this, but can we just debate it for like a brief second? Like, I just felt like where's Graha when you need him? Like somebody just like big brain this for like a little bit. Okay, let's bring her back, but let's put the following safeguards in place. Let's. And instead it's like, no, open her a tab at the bar. Let her do whatever she wants. She can roam freely.
Because we immediately trust her with world-bending secrets. Let us reveal you the truth of the shards and the source. And, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm if she doesn't go evil, that's perfectly fine. I'm not rooting for that actually at all. Like, I really like, yeah, this is great. And then
seems nice.
Yeah, she's like nice. She's very gray skinned, and this kind of like.
I even liked her at first when the scythe looked like she was a bow. I thought for a second she might be. I was like, oh my gosh, is she a bard? And I was still okay with her.
Yeah, surprising and shocking. Now, how do you feel now that we've kind of gotten 2 patches in, and they keep kind of being like, oh yeah, the scions are former scions. Like, it's like it felt like with Endwalker there really wasn't any kind of true payoff to kind of the buildup, and then it's like we're disbanding, and then it's like, okay,
sure,
what are we doing here, guys?
Star's
like
richer than ever before. We're still questing together. Sure. Yeah. Disbanding. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Why the formality? And
I felt that then.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
they said disbanding, and like in the same cutscene, we're like, but only publicly. Like it was like immediate.
Yeah, immediate, and then it's like, and then it continues that it's like, here we are. Like, to your point, why aren't we just being like, screw it, like let's go with like, yeah, bring it, let's consult Graha, let's because
it's the Avengers, and there's been like the law saying we can't be superheroes anymore, and then now we're going to be superheroes anyway. Like, it just, I don't know
who's making that law. You saved all of existence. Like, don't get together for casual coffee and tea and adventuring. I don't know. I love Graha, and the fact that he's not around like is a constant disappointment. But Brian, what's your review on 6.2?
Because I hadn't met him, but then I did Crystal Tower after Shadowbringers.
Yeah. Brian? What's your review of 6.2? It's garbage. It needs more Graha. Like, that's where we at. Like, was Graha included? No. Well,
we got a double scoop of La Habrea though.
That's true.
Who was delightful.
Yeah.
And not delightful. Whatever you want from him, he's got you.
He's got you. He's got you covered.
Was crushed it.
What do you think about the boss fights?
I love the trial fight. I actually really like the dungeon, and it made me excited. I was like, man, I hope they are backdoor giving themselves an option to make a hard mode of this later, like a Criterion version of this, because all I could think on like that last fight with like the concentric closing eyeballs. Don't look at the eyes. Which ones? Any of them. Like, I liked that, and I would love for there to be a harder mode of that just kills people. We already had a group wipe on it because you can get doomed, and then healers sometimes are like, I've never had to Asuna before this point. I'm not going to start now. And like the whole thing just declines rapidly. My second group wiped on it. First group, smooth as butter. I was like, wow, that dungeon was too easy. That's kind of a bummer. Second group is like, oh, this is killing people. Trial fight was wonderful. And then I did the raids. Yeah. I adore those raids.
What's your favorite boss out of the 4?
I think that the tree boss, I think I liked the story around it, and I loved it. Just felt like, do you remember when they added Bardoms and they're like, what if you did a Mario Party boss? And like just randomly in the game, this was like that, but with battle mechanics. Like, it's like, now do that while DPSing. And like, there's exploding beasts and laser beasts, and the tree is punching the ground, and like, and then you've got Elidibus like, get to the middle, and you're like, when? He's like, now, I guess. And the whole fight felt awesome, and that's the one that I think will be the wall in Savage, and I cannot wait to watch people just get launched.
I'm going to break it down for like my 4 here in this regards. I felt like P8 was too easy on normal. Like, I saw chat actually sounding off like that. Fido saying that. Like I was like, we did it. We one-shot it. Like, it was. I was like, okay, well, it just fell over. Okay, cool. But like, honestly, I think that's gonna be really cool to see. Like, in Savage, I love the Phoenix. I love the fire aspects. Like, I loved what the
How
theme.
Did they take it to Savage? So like, Pinax was such an obvious, like, they're just gonna make this way harder. And then there's a phase 2. How do they make that a hard phase 1 from normal? How would you make 8 more punishing besides just raising health and damage?
Well, I think essentially you start stacking up mechanics even sooner. Like, you have the torches. Torches are really interesting because you start stacking that up with wings, right? So like you have the wings and the serpent. Imagine those two coming out like pretty early. that's gonna be a struggle because it's like that takes your safe space in any fight, like there. And imagine though then another phase to that fight, right? Where it's like right now we have a transition, and so now we're gonna go into the real, P4S, in that regards.
What did you think of Carby's transition, and does Savage start down there?
So I don't think Savage starts down there. I think there's gonna be a transition. So on it though, like my favorite boss is Carby. I like, so I think the best mechanics is Tree Boss. So it's like I agree with you. Like I mechanically, like absolutely, I still have a heart for Carby. I thought that was great. I thought mechanically it's gonna be interesting to see what that looks like on Savage, because it kind of almost in a way had that E10s, like with the dog shadows, obviously now we're reflecting light and you're kind of paying attention. I was like, so it was really cool going into that into that fight, into that phase. I do think it will transition. I do not think they'll start in the the poison stuff, but then the modifications on the abilities once you're in that arena, I thought that was cool. I think the most fun mechanic I enjoyed the most was was actually from P6, where you had the transfusion, where you got the parasite, and then you had to like turn so you're not like killing the whole party. So like I enjoy
that. Was a callback to Eden.
Well, it's also
the turn and shoot was definitely present across Eden.
Well, same thing that actually was in the original Binding Coils with Medusa. So it's like you would scream, and so it's like that we've seen that mechanic before, but I appreciated it also with the kind of that countdown, because it's like, all right, what's going to happen here? And then it's like, I think it was just kind of neat because I think I'm going to go ahead and turn.
Did you watch any P4S?
I know.
So I do believe that a lot of Pandemonium was designed from people trapped inside their home from a virus, because P4S, there's a moment where you have to half the party gets the 2020 stay home from work for 2 weeks, and then you have to make sure that ends up on all tanks or all healers, and so you have to pull your mask down and cough on 2 people. And then there's lasers that go out, and sometimes the people that take the hit to the face are the same people that had to pull their masks down, and other times it's the other way around. And so like it is this very like COVID lions. So I just like the fact that then they're like, okay, now in P5 through 8, stop breathing on your friends, face out when you cough.
Yeah,
that feels like where we're going there on P6.
It's like bringing in real world situations into games. Perfect. I did see chat saying obviously with Graha that he's a part of the Alliance series, and I would say that's why he's not in 6.2. He's going to be here in 6.3, which makes 6.1, 6.3, 6.5. Just more Graha. So I'm like, let's go. That's where he's up to. And then I also see Carrie Ann talking about missing the twins, Alphino and Alizé. I wonder if we'll see them in any capacity, in 6.3. What do you think?
I didn't realize how much I'd missed. So I didn't like them during Endwalker. There were moments that I related to them, but I really didn't have a deep affection towards them. And now I've gone back and I've done Error and Heavensward, and I've really grown to like them a great deal more. And then I did my trial roulette yesterday, and I got Insinger for my first time since December. And like Alfie's talking to you during that fight. And so like, that's when I realized like how long it had been since my main had a chance to really spend some significant time with them, when we were like invested in that like Wonder Twins moment and Insinger to transition to phase.
Yeah.
I've always found, I mean, they're a little bit blue blood. Like when we did Coils, Alizé at one point, I think it was just a typo in the game thing. But if you go back and read the log, she literally, like, you meet the 2 brothers when you're attuning to go through that. She literally gets their names wrong, and she calls the guy the wrong name, and the guy doesn't correct her. And I was like, do you know how wealthy you have to be that 2 brothers, you just call one by the wrong name, and you just keep calling him the wrong name repeatedly for an entire cutscene, and he just goes, "Yes, ma'am." Like just the level of like dismissal, like towards, yeah, I know the guy. I called him both the same. Like, and so I assume it's just a typo in the chat. But I had to go back and open up the event log. I was like, did she call him the wrong name? Absolutely. So that's kind of how I feel towards them. Like, yeah, they're nice people who have had their entire lives given to them. And even when they branched out to go on their own and join a secret organization, it was back funded by their mother. So like, they can't do anything.
Who lied to their father and ultimately saved the all of his existence because of her deception.
Who was siphoning money off of what seems to be considered shared accounts and lying to their father. Like, the whole family's dysfunctional. Like, thank God they didn't have an honest and open communicative marriage, or the realm would have died. Like, thank goodness for the dysfunctional family of the Levelures. If they had had any healthy relationships with each other, we would have all died.
Now, Alex in chat says, wait, no mention of Y'shtola being the healer in the first duty. Very good point, Alex. That was something exciting to see. Y'shtola being able to kind of, in a way, kind of be a sage of both healing magics and of black magic.
She sees by using up her ether, right? So she sees she's going to, Matoya says, you're going to die living like this. Like, she is in an unsustainable thing. So the fact that she's now healing, the fact that she's giving ether, like, so I understand that when Yoshi P builds the slides internally, because he doesn't use this line on the external, he says, what are we going to need to build an expansion? We're going to need 5 new zones. We're going to need new dungeons, new trials, new raids, all surrounding a new MSQ. We're going to need Y'shtola to die at least once. We're going to need a bunch of new gear, a bunch of new glamour. Like I know that Y'shtola dying is somewhere in the middle in there. So like, she's already died once this expansion, but it just feels like at some point she has to die for real, right? Like, at some point she has to go down, and we're like, oh, she'll be back. And they're like, no, she has like a negative ether balance. Like, she has been draining that account for years.
A long time. That warning and things like that was so long ago. And yet they're like, that's the thing. Like,
yeah,
are we still writing checks that we're going to have to cash in the future? Because it seems like we keep, for some reason being able to pull out the debit card. And
she went blind in 3.0 and started burning ether to see. And has died every 2 years and come back.
Angel Future says, I'm just sick of saving the universe with teenagers. You might be sick of JRPGs, my friend, because that is the universes are saved because teenagers have time and no responsibility.
That's not just JRPGs. I was hanging out with friends in Denver, and we were watching Paw Patrol, and we were watching Bob. It just, the number of like teenagers saving the world, that's what makes it fun. Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Like, oh, thank goodness for those teenagers and that dog.
Yeah, absolutely.
The new one, he's like obsessed with his traps. And I keep thinking these traps, but they're
Freddy, dude, that's so funny too.
What is happening?
Absolutely obsessed with them. And then the characterization of that incarnation of Scooby-Doo is phenomenal. I watched that with the kids. And then we watched
as my friends' kids get older, I'm starting to watch a lot more. When they're super young, people don't invite you over when you have super young kids because it's not fun for anybody.
Oh, Daniel Tiger.
And now they're into that age where like I'm having a lot of fun with when my friends' kids are like, hey, do you want to play? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. 100%.
100%.
You are a blast.
100%. I think I've covered everything that I want to kind of talk about and kind of shed my thoughts on, especially with the latest patch. It feels absolutely meaty. Like I'm really more like I've even going into it outside of story, like even all of that, I'm really looking at the variant and the Criterion dungeons as the pinnacle for me. Like, again, you don't have to agree with me. I'm glad people are enjoying Eye of the Sanctuary, but it's like I think you had the best advice. Like I'm gonna do that with Maddie. We're gonna make that a dad-daughter time kind of event, and I think I'm gonna enjoy it better that way. But it's like
either because the time gates are like 12 hours or whatever. It's not like she's like setting her alarm to we gotta
get it. No. So it's like that sounds like that's going to be the best play there. But then I think will be fun, especially in September with my Mondays coming back, be able to jump into like extremes, maybe do some Savage as well, and actually have time to kind of put towards that as I finish up my Omni 90s.
I was told there was some significant side quests after the MSQ that opened up right there in Radzahan.
Okay.
And I didn't do them because I'm still trying to get through like what I was like, if they didn't label it as main content, I'm going to get through what they think is most important. And then we can come back for that. But the the fact that we're getting all these side quests that are really significant. We have some side quests that have like big treasure hunts. We have some side quests that tell really significant stories and are chains. My understanding is if they have a portrait, they're a more significant side quest. I would love to see, for any Square Enix employee that's for some reason hanging out this late in the podcast, thank you so much for being here. Will you please come up with an additional quest icon that delineates side quest and substantial side quest? Most of ARR is just filler, because they built it in 18 months, right? They get stuff out the door. It's impressive how much they did do. But as we've gotten into some of this, where you've got these post MSQ exclamation points, it just kind of like mixes in with any other undone quests throughout Razihan. So I would love to see that labeled a little bit better. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe just a little like star on there, like the little like high quality type star or whatever. On the side quest, but something to help us delineate when there's a side quest that you're like, okay, I finished story and I'm hungry for more. Where do I go? I don't know.
I'd like that.
Keep it optional.
Keep it optional. Keep it optional.
But for people that want the extended cut.
All right. Guys, thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this collaborative co-stream with Twitch and YouTube here. And that's going to be happening a little bit more here on the channel. And we'll hopefully be bringing you guys probably maybe leave your shorter videos, or we'll figure out what we want to do on it. So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Appreciate the likes. Also, if you guys are listening to this in an audio form, be sure to give the podcast itself a rating, and that will help us out greatly. Go follow Chris over at Gaming Kinda. Also, he is going to be live, and actually is technically live right now on Twitch. The link is in the chat log as well. So if you want to go hang out with him, he's going to be doing some more Guild Wars 2 today, and there are Guild Wars 2 drops, which just recently released for Steam. So
up for that?
I don't know. I'm gonna let you figure that out. Like, no, I think you might need to link something. Like, you might want to click on. You can do it while live. I don't think it's gonna be like, all right, you got to take the stream down or whatnot. But the guys, really appreciate y'all hanging out. Hopefully, you guys are gonna have a wonderful day, and hopefully, we'll see you in our next video and or live stream and or podcast and or everything that we do around here. All the craziness. This has been the Crystal Core Radio Podcast Impromptu. Should you return to Final Fantasy 14 patch 6.2 review? You guys are awesome. We love you very much, and we'll see you next time. But until then,
take care. And or.
All right, guys, I'm going to end broadcast over here. If you want to head over onto Twitch, you'll see us there for just a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. So ending broadcast, and it should be